you gotta pucker up your lips like this.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Frantastic Makeup. In today's video, we're doing some more halo eye practice, mainly using the Fleur Fantasia palette from Pat McGrath. In fact, the entire look is pretty much all Pat McGrath because I was trying out the foundation from her line for the first time when I recorded this video. I don't do reviews though, so don't expect one anytime soon. I just play with makeup. Side note before we get into it, this video is not sponsored despite the fact that pretty much all of it is Pat McGrath. Anyways, if you like makeup videos from an amateur makeup enthusiast and want to see me stumble through more looks in the future, be sure to do all that YouTube stuff like subscribing and hitting the bell notification so you get alerts, and keep watching. Prior to hitting the record button, my skin was already prepped with my preferred skincare products. As always, for the first step in my makeup application, using my fingers, I applied my always favorite eyeshadow primer all over my entire upper lid area, from lash line to eyebrow, as well as along my lower eyelid. I prefer using my fingers when applying primer because it allows me to feel when the primer has actually set. With a rounded contour shadow brush, I applied my contour powder as a transition shade to my upper eyelids. If you watched my last halo eye video, you know I don't do halo eyes very often. In fact, I can probably count the number of times on 2 hands now. So my main goal with my transition placement was to carve out the shape of my eye socket so I could have a template of where to place certain colors in future steps. For the first bit of color, from the Fleur Fantasia palette, I applied lavender blue to my entire upper lid area. I used a rounded contour brush I've owned for literally years and blended the color out through my crease. When I envisioned this look, I had actually pictured that by the end of it, this color would sort of be peeking out the most, sort of creating like a halo around the halo eye. I don't know. But the vision got lost in the blending somewhere along the way, I'm sure, and we'll see that later. Either way, the vision that I started with basically told me that I should be blending this color with my transition shade. So, sticking with that same color and vision, I also applied lavender blue along the entire length of my lower lash line using a short shader brush. For the next step, I began focusing on the corners of my eyes. Using a tapered crease brush, I applied Lotus Paradise, again from the Fleur Fantasia palette, to the inner and outer corners of my eyes and blended the color inward toward the center of my lid. While I was blending, I tried to make sure to not blend too far inward because I still wanted lavender blue to be the pop on the center of my lid. And with the same short shader brush that I used in my previous step, I also applied Lotus Paradise, but only for some reason to the outer corner of my lower lid, and then blended it inward. I wish I had some sort of logic to explain why I only applied it to my outer corner, but honestly, I've got nothing. In this step, I wanted to add more depth to my corners and wanted to start pulling in deeper pinks into the look. So I grabbed a taper crease brush that I used from earlier steps and applied a color called Venomous Void to my corners and blended it inward. The color is from Pat McGrath's Celestial Divinity palette that she released during the holiday season, so I guess this look really isn't Fleur Fantasia palette exclusive. Anyways, so when I did place this color, I tried to make sure my placement was limited to the deeper areas of my corners first, and then blended inward while still leaving lavender blue as the center highlight on the center of my upper lid. I also applied Venomous Void to my corner areas of my lower lash line and blended it inwards. For my outer corner, I used my short shader brush, whereas for my inner corner, I used a mini smudge brush for better precision. Here is where the look takes a turn for the glitz. You thought I was gonna say take a turn for the worst, didn't you? Fooled you. Laughing at my own stupid jokes. Anyways, back to the Fleur Fantasia palette. I applied Iridescent Orchid to the center of my lid using my fingers. After filling in the center of my lid, I wanted to fix some of the areas where I blended Iridescent Orchid out too far, so I went back in with Venomous Void and my tapered crease brush and touched up some of my corner areas. As I touched up each area, I blended Venomous Void inward with Iridescent Orchid to help create a smoother shift in colors and textures. and with keeping with tradition of as above so below, much like with my upper lid, on my lower lid I applied iridescent orchid to the center of it using my fingers. Then once it was applied, I blended and touched up any corners using my tapered crease brush. This is my does it look even face. After applying iridescent orchid to the center of my lid, I felt like it blended too well into Venomous Void and didn't stand out enough, so I applied a bit of Astral White from Pat McGrath's Mothership 1, her subliminal palette, to brighten up the center of my lid again. I applied it using my finger, lightly tapping it on top of iridescent orchid. And once again, to help keep the shift in colors and textures smooth, I blended out any harsh lines with my rounded contour brush. Except for the outer corner area of my right eye that you see, I'm just gonna leave that however for some reason. With the majority of the eyeshadow done, pay no attention to my not fully blended right eye, I moved on to lining my lash lines. When I line my upper lash line, I prefer to start at the center and move outwards, then draw from my inner corner to the center of my lid until the two lines connect. For my lower lash line, I will start at the outer corner and then draw inward about a third of the way across my lower lash line, and then using a small short shader brush, I'll smudge the liner along my lash line and then pull the color in along the lower lash line as well. At the last minute, before moving on to the rest of my makeup, I decided I wanted the center of my lid to have more sparkle, so with my fingers, I applied a touch of Astral White eyeshadow, also from Pat McGrath's Mothership 1 Subliminal palette. I think I'm okay with how this looks. With the majority of my eye makeup done at this stage, I started to move on to the rest of my makeup. I recently purchased the foundation from Pat McGrath's line, but I had to make my best guess at my foundation color given the current circumstances of the world today. So as you can see, the shade is a bit light for me, but by the time the foundation oxidized towards the end of the look, it did match closer to my skin tone, still a bit light, but closer. So as per my usual quote-unquote technique, I dabbed a bit of foundation on my face and then buffed it out until I felt the coverage was even. I know this foundation is buildable, but because I didn't want to go too heavy in coverage, I tried to make what I was already using go a long way. I personally don't like heavy foundation given the amount of texture my skin has, so I try to keep it to a minimum. I also purchased the Perfection Concealer Corrector from the Pat McGrath line, and basically for the shade I selected, I went with the recommended shade that the site offers based on the foundation shade that I chose during my purchase. So, much like the foundation, the shade of the concealer was a bit lighter than I was expecting, but I will say the suggested shade did blend really nicely with the foundation that I chose. I applied the concealer to trouble areas under my eyes and then blended it out until even using a fluff brush. I also used this process to sort of clean up my eyeshadow along my lower lash line where I may have not blended it so nicely or just went too far down or something. So I used my concealer to sort of clean it up and kind of hide those mistakes. Definitely a bit light for my skin tone, but as far as coverage goes, I'm happy. See, this is why I don't do reviews. I'm not even gonna act like I know what I'm doing when it comes to my brows. They are the one part of my makeup routine that I literally dread whenever I get to them. So my main goal when filling in and defining my brows is letter 1, making sure they're even, and number B, hoping they don't look like I used Sharpie. Just don't stare at them too long and maybe you won't notice. To accentuate my cheekbones, I applied a contour powder to the hollows of my cheeks as well as to my temple area and blended the powder into my hairline. This is pretty much the same contouring technique I've used since 2007 or 2008. I just placed the powder at a steeper angle now compared to when I was in my late 20s. Yes, I actually remember the video is still on my channel. I remember seeing a graphic from one of Kevin Alquan's books back in the day explaining contouring, and I pretty much committed that graphic to memory. For cheek highlight, I used Champagne Gold highlighter from Pat McGrath and applied it using a tapered highlighter brush. If you're wondering why I look like Popeye right now, I have astigmatism in my left eye, so when I do things on the right side of my face, especially the far right side of my face, closing my left eye usually helps me see better. For a blush, I applied MAC Mineralized Blush in the color of Dainty using my Duo Fiber face brush. When I apply blush, I also use this step not only to just add color back into my cheeks that the foundation has taken away, but I also use this step to sort of make sure that my contouring and my highlight powder are blended together too. I like to think of blush as being that secret blender between the contour and the highlight shades. To finish setting my foundation, I applied a translucent setting powder to my face with a large face brush, but mainly to the areas of my face where a powder product had not already been applied. This is a tip I remember hearing from Eve Pearl way back in the day and have used throughout my 30s to help keep my makeup from feeling heavy or having that cakey look. With my face makeup done and my brows filled in, I moved on to what I thought would be the last eyeshadow product for this look, my brow highlight, but more on that later. For my brow highlight and my second to last eyeshadow product of this look, I used Skin Show Nude Eyeshadow. It's an eyeshadow that comes in a couple of different Pat McGrath palettes, so go ahead and Google it and you can find out which ones to be exact. Using my shadow blending brush, the color was applied to my brow bone and then blended in with my transition shade that was applied in previous steps.
Oh my gosh, brow's gone wild over here. I'm actually digging it. And what are you doing later?
I had nowhere to go, but was feeling extra the day I was recording, so to match my mood, I applied a touch of astral white to the tops of my cheeks for extra sparkle. I wanted to feel extra glitzy while I was doing dishes this day, okay? Lastly, almost lastly, I curled my lashes and applied 2 coats of mascara to them. Both coats were Pat McGrath's Fetishize Mascara in Extreme Black. Remember that bit I said about the last eyeshadow product? Well, now we're gonna apply the last eyeshadow product after I already have my foundation applied and my mascara on, mind you. This is something that I meant to do before I applied my mascara. But anyways, having remembered that I forgot to apply an inner corner highlight, I grabbed my pencil brush and very carefully applied Utopia from the Fleur Fantasia palette to my inner corner and lightly blended it. And last but not least, my lips. For my lips this go around, I went with a little more color than my usual neutral colors and flirted with pinks a bit. Woo, look at me living on the wild side. First, I lined my lips with Bare Rose lip liner and then went in with Belle Amour Divine Lip Shine, both products from Pat McGrath. I think they came out with a Divine Rose collection when she released that. I swear, this isn't sponsored. I just really like her line, much like how I used to obsess over MAC back in the day, okay? And that does it. Hopefully you guys liked this makeup look. I'm gonna be honest here, editing this video has been a real struggle because I wasn't all that enthusiastic with how messy the execution was in some spots, but then I realized I'm not perfect and little imperfections are what make us all unique, so yeah. Yay, inspirational message. The lighting difference you're seeing here is the difference between my normal lighting during my recording versus additional lighting from my phones that I use to help capture the sparkle on camera. Products specifically used while recording are listed in the upcoming credits. Please be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video. If you have any constructive feedback, suggestions, or insights, feel free to leave them in the comment section, and if you know someone who might enjoy this tutorial, why not send it their way?
All products used were personally purchased by me, Kuuipo1207, for personal use. Products mentioned were not received as gifts and/or were not provided for promotional use. Additionally, financial compensation has not been provided for in return for the production of this video.
If you managed to make it to this point, then holy wow, I salute you. All joking aside though, if you're looking for more content from me, stop by my channel. A lot of it is way outdated, but I've got a couple of videos lined up and ready for uploading soon, so you may as well make sure you're subscribed and set up for notifications. Thank you again so much for watching, and until next time, stay safe and stay sane.